listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This is the Cisco edition, taking your business a level up. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Keri Roberts, and my guests today are Patrick Dempsey, a distribution services and software manager at Cisco, Nicole Dziedzic, a senior vendor business manager for Cisco at Ingram Micro, and Chris Blackwell, a senior partner success manager at Ingram Micro. Welcome, Patrick, Nicole, and Chris. We are excited to have all three of you here with us today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
So we've been chatting a lot about recurring revenue models on this show. Can you define for us, for those that are still not sure what it means, what a recurring model is and why it's important to business growth, especially over the long term?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with that one. So when I really think about recurring revenue, what I'm thinking about is predictability. You know, those two words kind of go synonymous with one another. But at the end of the day, all a recurring revenue model is, it's a business model that enables a business to have more predictable revenue streams. And those revenue streams are going to occur at regular intervals going forward with a high degree of certainty that they're going to close. I think that they're very important to businesses because for businesses that are concerned with maintaining constant and a consistent stream of revenue. So we look at a legacy model, which is really a prepay, land, and then go find your next deal. There's really no guarantee when that next deal will come, but with recurring revenue, there is. You can have a better outlook in terms of what you're going to grab on a monthly, an annual, a quarterly basis based on what that consumption model looks like. And it also gives flexibility to the end customer so that they can pay for that product or service over time. The only other thing I want to mention with this, and then I'm going to let Pat and Chris kind of talk a little bit around how they view it, is that this isn't anything that's really that new. From a consumer, anytime I look at recurring revenue or even what's going on in the industry, I'm always looking back to how it's impacting me in my personal life. And this is nothing new. So I look at what I have and, you know, for years, I've had phone bills, my Netflix subscription. I even subscribe to unlimited car washes, all because it makes my life a little bit easier, but then I know what I'm spending on a month-to-month basis. And so that's how businesses can really look at it for their partners, especially when they're looking at how do they budget, but how do they continue to be successful over the long term.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there, Nicole, and I think you really kind of articulated what recurring models are. But I mean, it really is a great way to forecast future cash flow and budgets. I mean, if you think about from a Cisco perspective why we did there and how Wall Street perceived us from going to a recurring model along with a software model, it really helped us from not only a monetary perspective, but also from a forecasting from a Wall Street understanding what our earnings might look like. So, I mean, when you think about, you know, from a partner perspective, when we talk, you know, 2T and 1T partners, it really allows you to control your plan for growth. I mean, and that's the most important thing. In the past, partners would acquire a customer and sell a product to them. Now with a recurring model, they acquire a customer, but they're selling products. So what you're not doing is you're not having that one-off sale. You're always consistently working with them and selling more and more products into the partner and really creating that cohesiveness with the end customer. And what we're really talking about is really trying to eliminate the churn, right? How do we retain our customers? And when you think about recurring models and working with the partners and understanding how to provide products into them on a monthly or yearly basis, you're really apt to eliminate the churn and losing partners.
That's a really good point, Pat. One of the things that I look at when we're looking at what is recurring and why is it important over the long term, and that's because of something Nicole said. These business owners at the end user, these decision makers, they're all individual people with individual lives. And what are they doing in their individual lives? They are subscribing to Netflix. They are subscribing to Amazon Prime. They have all of these recurring offers that they do in their daily lives, and they're wanting to bring that into the business. And you know, it's even down to now, I have seen these commercials for a credit card that's offering like a recurring charges dashboard so that you can manage all of your recurring charges in one easy to go place. And so, you know, that's starting to spill over into this B2B world. And I think that's why it's really important, because these people are doing it in their everyday lives and they're wanting to bring that into their business as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Cisco has been shifting software offers to a subscription model over the last few years. Recently, though, however, Cisco made a statement around COVID and how it has forced them to re-examine its entire portfolio and offer anything as a service. Can you help our listeners better understand what that means for its customers?
Yeah, I'll take that one. And it's kind of what we talked about in the first segment. It's all about consumption-based model. It's that partners and customers want to pay for what they're using. Netflix is a great example of that, right? So when you think about what we're doing from a Cisco perspective, we're going to focus on software, services, and subscriptions. Right now, 78% of our total software revenue is sold as a subscription. Our target was 66% when Chuck launched this about a year and a half ago. So as you said earlier, from a Cisco perspective, COVID-19 really drove us to that. So when you think about all of our hardware, when you think security, cloud collaboration, SD-WAN, what we're really trying to do now is based on the demands of the partner, on the needs of the customer, and what they're looking for is to provide these products as a service. So we're going over the next, from an FY21 perspective, over the next, I would say 9 to 15 months, really focus on how do we take our hardware products that were, in the past were let's sell them out and after the 3 year, we'll, resell new products into them. How do we take that product? How do we change our portfolio of products and make them on a consumption-based way to give them to the end customers because this is what they're looking for.
And I just want to add on to that from an Ingram lens and also some of the feedback that I hear from our partners. So when I first heard this statement at the end of Cisco 20, I was really excited because, a big part of my role is looking to see where is Cisco going and where do our partners want to go and how do we help kind of coordinate that all so that it makes sense so that our partners can be successful, Cisco can be successful, and Ingram can be successful. So when they started talking about, everything as a service, looking outside of some of the software offerings that have legacy, that have usually been as a service model, we'll call it, and looking to expand that into some of their legacy portfolio, whether it's on hardware or services or whatever it might end up being. It really aligns nicely with where Ingram wants to take the Cisco business with Cisco is how do we better create flexible offers for the partners so that they can go to their end customers? How do we help them have long-term success? And all of that is going to tie back to these flexible options, whether it's pay for consumption, whether it is flexible payment options, but really having that ability to do everything as a service is really where Ingram and Cisco are working together to create some of these unique values that we're going to bring to market.
Yeah. And Keri, the one last thing I'll say is this is what the partners and the customers are demanding. So, Cisco and Ingram are giving the customers what they want, as opposed to in the past, they might say, this is our offering and go make it work. Now the partners and the end customers are telling us what they need, and we're trying to devise plans around that to provide them the best possible business outcome that we can for them.
If the customers are demanding it, what would you say are some of the biggest barriers in getting partners or even clients that are having a hard time really grasping this in order to be able to sell it and use the recurring revenue models?
Honestly, a lot of these partners are stuck in the mindset of, well, this is how we've always done it. So a lot of those partners are having a tough time transitioning into a recurring model because they really just don't understand it. And, they're like, well, how's that going to affect my cash flow? Because I'm used to these big pops coming in and having all of my money up front. Well, and now having to change that. So they're having to look at not just changing what they're selling, they have to do a wholesale change within their business. How do they manage their cash flow? How do they pay their sales reps? How do they pay their support reps? Everything looks different in this recurring model. And so that's a huge barrier for a lot of these folks, especially, we all know these guys. These are some lifestyle partners that just say, you know what, I'm happy with what I'm doing. In another 10 years, I'm retiring. And so those partners are maybe not the ones best suited, but there are some growth partners out there that say, I want to do the absolute best thing that I can, and that is moving to this recurring model. And that's what we're here at Ingram to help them understand and help them do.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give a shout out to Chris and the team. I mean, Chris does this every day, Keri. I mean, he's working with partners, he's meeting with them, and not just talking about why it's important to go to recurring revenue models, but really making sure it makes sense for their business. And if it doesn't at the time, how to get them there. So Chris and the Ingram team have done a fantastic job driving this for us. And if anyone has any questions, they should reach out to them, because as Chris stated, this is not an easy process. It's definitely something that has to work for their business. But this is where the industry is heading, and this is more importantly where their competition is heading. So they have to make sure that they're aware of this and what it means for their business going forward.
Would you say that there are hybrid model options for maybe those that aren't fully ready to transition to this? And what would be the value of them to the clients and the partners?
So I would definitely say that there are hybrid models. And I would say when we look at partners that are maybe selling in a prepaid world, that we would never recommend for them to just do a hard cut over to recurring revenue or subscription type model based on everything that Chris just talked about, right? You have a lot of cash flow that you need to work out throughout that process. So what makes the most sense for some of those partners that what I'll call are not born in the cloud partners, which are really partners that have built their business on a subscription model, is to establish what's going to make sense for them to ensure that their business is successful through the transition and then long term, right? So making sure that they're doing it gradually doing it over time, that they're finding that balance to their business. And when we look at some of the most successful companies in the world, they operate in this manner. They have many hybrid models that are making them successful. And I think the probably most well-known example of that is Amazon. So when you look at Amazon, you have two different ways that they're generating revenue. They're doing it in their retail space by doing one-time purchases, but then they also have subscription offerings. They have cloud offerings, right? So they have a good balance of, one-time transactions as well as these subscriptions that are going to generate revenue over time. So really making sure that they're catering to every need while ensuring their long-term success is how our partners are going to be successful as well.
Yeah, and Nicole, I would just add, I think most of the partners that are doing this globally are all hybrid. I mean, it's very difficult to shift one way or the other, and I don't know if I would even recommend being 100% one way or the other. So your Amazon example is a great one. And if it's good enough for Amazon, I think it's good enough for everybody.
Definitely.
Right. Says Jeff Bezos with his $3 trillion in his bank account.
100%. The only other thing I really want to add on to that too, though, is that, Chris mentioned it, this is not something that is easy. And we recognize that, and Cisco recognizes that. So what I would always say is to make sure that you're reaching out to your teams, whether it's at Ingram, Cisco, or a combination, because both companies have created some really unique offerings to ensure that as you're pivoting to a subscription model or as you're incorporating that into your business model, that you're going to be successful. Anything from finance offerings to just really modeling out your business to make sure that what you're doing makes sense for you and for your end customers. I always recommend reaching out to some of the teams that we have at Ingram, because this is what they do all day, every day. Chris is one of those people, for example, as well as at the vendor, right? Both companies in this scenario is really looking at making sure the partner is successful. We want to make sure our partners know they are definitely not in this alone, and we are here to help support them.
Do you have any suggestions of how a partner can sell a recurring revenue model if they haven't yet? Maybe some tips that they could use. I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into this, but maybe 1, 2, or 3 tips that you could give.
Well, what I would say is that, you're not really selling a recurring revenue model. You're selling flexibility to make sure that you're meeting your business, your customers' needs. And those needs could be due to various reasons. It could be budget constraints. It could be rollouts, right? It could be a long-term plan for growth, right? So I would say we always need to ensure that we're looking at what that end customer requirements are in the short term as well as the long term. When we're looking at what do we want to position for them to solve their problem, aligning those business outcomes and making sure that we're eliminating, inhibitors like budgets by offering these flexible payment models.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Nicole, because it is a slight change in the way that they sell. Whereas before, maybe they only dealt with the IT department, but there are lots of other departments at the end user that they're working with that have budget. Maybe they don't have a capital expenditure budget, but they have an operating budget. So that CapEx versus OpEx. And with a recurring offer, it is specifically around that operational expense. And so get outside of the IT department. If you are trying to find opportunities to sell a recurring model, start talking to marketing, start talking to the different areas within that end user, because they've got budget and they have problems that they need solved. And there are lots of recurring offers out there that can solve many problems for those departments. And now you have gone from selling just a one-off piece of hardware to now you're selling that recurring solution because it meets a need within that business.
Right. I mean, and Chris well said. When you talk about recurring revenue models, it's really a transformation of the partner and how they want to sell. So in the past, we said this earlier, it was you would sell, move on to the next sale. Now it's all around adoption. It's all around the life cycle of selling. It's all around business outcomes. So, one of the things that Chris and the Ingram team do is they have those types of discussions with the partners, Keri, to see if this is what they want to do. So it's really, as Nicole said, it's not really selling them. It's making sure that the business wants to transform their business into this model.
I think one of the challenges or fears maybe of recurring revenue models is that it suggests that companies have to be fully on their game each month to make sure the clients are continuing to pay and to not cancel, or in other words, eliminate churn. How can partners create this great customer experience every single month to keep these clients coming back over and over again?
Well, we've kind of touched on that already, and you've heard the word business outcomes. We've talked about that a few times, and that's key, because as long as the partner is focusing on the end user's business outcome, they're going to provide a great customer experience. Let me tell you a little bit about what business outcome actually is. Some folks may understand it. Some may be like, why are we using these words? The business outcome is the why. Why did that end user purchase this particular solution? It is going to solve a problem for them within their business that is unique to that end user. That is the why they bought it. They don't really care about what they buy as long as it solves the why that they need it. And so that's where partners have to really understand what these offers are and make a good case and help the end user understand their business outcomes. And then by doing those adoption motions after the sale, like Pat has said, it used to be a one-time, you sell it, you move on, and you go to something else. Now, after the sale, you have to continue on with these adoption motions, making sure that that end user is using the software that they purchased to meet those business outcomes that they laid out for you, so that when the renewal time comes, you've got a happy end customer. That renewal is really a non-event. And many times they just automatically say, yeah, we're going to renew, and they don't send that back out to bid. That's how you know you've got a happy customer with a customer experience that you provided as a partner, is because those renewals become a lot easier. There's a lot of information within Cisco that they have done studies that have shown when you add a customer success practice to your business, your renewal rates go up markedly. And so let us help you understand how to do that and how to provide that great customer experience.
And Keri, churn is the number one factor that will cause a recurring revenue model at any partner or any customer to fail. And so the first thing you really need to do is analyze why churn is occurring. And we gave many examples of some global companies that we all have at our homes that do a really nice job of understanding what their users are doing. So they're engaging with customers. So you need to engage with your customers. You need to educate the customer. But more importantly, you have to understand who's at risk. And one of the things when you think about recurring revenue models, you talk about, adoptions. Who's utilizing the product? Have they turned it on? Are they using it to the capabilities? All this type of information is provided into the end customer, so you can understand, are they really getting the bang for their buck? So what's happening is what a recurring revenue model does, it makes the partner and the customer really become one. working together, as Chris said, on a business outcome, trying to solve for a problem. And that's the most important thing. And so you go back to your Netflix examples and your Amazon Primes. That's what they do. If you're not using Netflix, you get an email and they basically say, hey, Pat Dempsey, I understand you haven't been on in the last 6 months. This might be interested. Here's a film or a documentary, something that you might be interested in. So they always know what their customers are doing and what they're engaged in. And I think that's the biggest takeaway when you talk about how do you eliminate churn is really engagement with that partner and that end customer.
Now, Cisco has reoccurring revenue models for partners, and Ingram has a variety of resources for partners as well. Can you share what they are and how this shift to more of a reoccurring model is adapting to the market demand, and how Cisco and Ingram are helping to impact this experience?
Yeah, so one of the big things that Ingram did was a couple years back, they said, you know what, this is an area that's lacking. We need to create a dedicated customer experience team. And that customer experience team started out relatively small. It started out with me and Nicole, and working through that, working directly with Pat. Slow down. I was saying working directly with Pat, but you're a Cisco guy. You're not an Ingram guy. I was talking about our Ingram team.
But one team,
yeah,
one goal, my friend.
It is. It certainly is. And so we all work together to make sure that these partners understand what is customer success. And so what we have done is implement a training schedule, a helping schedule for these partners where we explain to them what are business outcomes. We do trainings on that, where we help partners create customer success plans that help them drive adoption and understand why those are important. We do customer experience workshops with these partners to help them understand how to bring a CX practice into their business. And so those are just some of the things that we have done at Ingram to really drive this whole CX experience with the partner community. And I know that Pat's got some stuff too, and I know Nicole's got some more stuff on Ingram, but those are the main things that I really like to focus on, because it's what I do 100% of the time. I am involved with these partners helping create this CX practice.
Yeah, and to add on to that, we're constantly looking at ways that we can continue to help our partners scale. So we know that doing CX, and CX can mean a bunch of different things, customer experience and your brand awareness from a partner perspective, or Ingram or Cisco, right? It is how they interact with you as a company. There's the whole life cycle component of it, which is really, ensuring that they're getting the value out of the solution that they purchased and realizing their business outcomes. And that's really where our CX team is excelling. But Ingram as a whole is definitely looking at how do we improve that experience? How do we continue to meet the changing needs and demands of our partners so that they can continue to be successful and that they can continue to pivot? And one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is create efficiency tools so that our partners can start to focus on being more proactive, can start to focus on some of the life cycle in the back end and the post-sales motions within their company versus having to worry about that front-end transactional or operational component. And PartnerGo is a really good example of that. And that is a tool that we created to really ensure that our partners had a seamless and easy experience to place orders, get order status updates, tracking, and everything else. And what that enables them to do is then take those resources that maybe were hunting that information down before and relocate them within their company to focus on that experience that they're going to have with their end customers. It really helps with scale for both Ingram, for our partners, for Cisco. It's a really positive experience. But at the end of the day, it's really how do we help them free up resources to focus in other areas, in other growth areas in the industry, to continue to make sure that our partners are showing up differently to their end customers and being successful.
Yeah, and in closing, Nicole, the one thing I just want to call from a Cisco perspective is lifecycle advantage. It's a co-branded program with our partners that is automated and really promotes adoption. One of the things we're really focused on is simplifying the renewals. We heard Chris talk earlier about having the renewal as a non-event. Lifecycle Advantage is a program that helps many of our partners through this. And basically what we're trying to do is upsell to create higher value solutions. So you can get more information on that on the Cisco website under the Success Hub piece. So I can share that at the end of this, but it's a Cisco Success Hub's Lifecycle Advantage. I would have all the partners take a look at that if they're not already enrolled to enroll in that. And once again, the Ingram team can help them with that enrollment.
You know, one of the things we ask on this show all the time is where does technology kind of expand in the coming years? So whether it pertains to what we're talking about today or tech as a whole, where do you see technology going within this next year? And Patrick, I'll start with you.
I love this question because this is a question where you can just imagine, right? And everyone has their views, and there's a lot of things that I do from watching the tech sector and some of the great things that are happening. So I'm going to call out two. One of them is AI, artificial intelligence, and the second
Stop
one's 5G.
that. I'm going to call out yours, Pat. You better quit.
What did I pick? What did I pick? AI? Okay, I'll skip AI. But I'll add it with when you talk. But no, so 5G. So right, everyone, Apple just announced their new phone came out yesterday. They're talking about 5G. The Bills were on last night, and they were talking Chris Rock had the Verizon 5G commercial. So what does that all mean? And what we're talking about is increased download and upload speeds and more stable connections. But how does that help from a networking perspective? It's going to improve the IoT, and that's what it's all about. It's going to increase bandwidth. It's going to collect and transfer data faster. So when you think of some of the areas that Cisco is focused in and where our products are focused, it's all around IoT. It's going to help advance our products in those areas. And as more and more carriers come on board and as more and more providers of 5G, and more importantly, more consumers get access to 5G, I think that is the biggest area you're going to see from a technology perspective in the next year. So I will skip my AI comment and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Well, I think Keri asked for one example, Pat. In your example, you gave 3 technologies. And so I'm like, okay. Where am I going to go with this? So I will mention
3?
AI. Yeah, IoT, that's another one, Pat. I know they're all tied to 5G, but you said, I want to talk about 5G.
Hey, as we talk, this is my second podcast. This is my favorite question, and as Nicole said, I was going to run roughshod on this one, so I apologize. I will go on mute now. But 5G IoT.
Yeah, no worries. But Pat's right. The crazy thing is how interconnected all of these technologies are, and yeah, you can't really have a 5G conversation without bringing up AI because the artificial intelligence has to communicate somehow, and the new 5G networks are going to allow them to communicate faster. There's a subset of AI that is very important, especially when you start looking at security, because in the digital age with all this technology that we're in, cybersecurity is super important, and machine learning is a subset of AI. And machine learning is basically where the programs actually learn the patterns and what to look for that these hackers are using when they're trying to get into your digital experience. And so Cisco has done a great job of incorporating machine learning into their security offerings. Think AMP for endpoints. It looks at and analyzes the data that's coming over, and it sees the trends that these hackers are using. And so that is a huge piece of AI that maybe we don't always talk about, but that will continue to expand as we have more information out there because of 5G. As more things come online because of IoT, it's going to become super important.
So I'm gonna talk about mine, which is completely different than what Chris and Pat talked about, and I think that has to do a lot with everything that's going on in the market, in the economy, in the world, right? So if I was asked this question a year ago, which I was, my answer is very different than what I think my answer is going to be right now. And what I would say right now, it's less based on what an actual technology is, and it's more based on, what is being demanded by the consumers. And that is, I expect to see a lot more everything as a service, cloud-based offers to be brought to market. And when I say that, I think that we're going to see companies that have historically sold, whether it's hardware or prepaid type models, really change their go-to-market to offer more flexible offerings. A lot of it tying back to what we talked about during this, and we already see Cisco, making some aggressive moves and statements around how they're going to transform their business. But this is what companies are going to have to do to stay successful throughout the next year and years to come, is what I truly believe. When I look at the companies that have had some significant growth in 2020, and I'll be honest, there's probably not a ton of them, it is companies that have these subscription models, that have these flexible type models for their partners, for the end customers to then consume, that are really experiencing some significant growth. And I think that is something that will never go back to some of the legacy ways of prepaid or, buying a count of licenses. It's going to be more of a demand for consumption, for flexible options, for hardware, for services, for software. It doesn't really matter. People need and want and are going to continue to demand that flexibility. And I think we're going to continue to see the technology industry, and probably a lot of industries for that matter, continue to look at how do they offer these subscription type models, regardless of what they're selling and who they're selling it into.
And Keri, I don't know if you can tell, we're all pretty passionate about these things. So, I know we cut up with each other, but these are technologies that will be driving everything in the coming year, in the coming 5 years. And so while I love to pick at Pat, we're all on the same page, and we all want every partner out there to be successful.
Keri, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you agree with?
I mean, we ask this question for every episode. We're over 100 episodes now, and a lot of similarities. We're hearing 5G, AI, IoT. As people are specifically talking about something that relates to the conversation we had. Then we have people going more consumer side, where they're talking about more self-driving cars and things of that nature. So it's been a large mix. I personally am very big on the voice technology and the AI. So I think we're going to see a lot more usage of that. But I think, as you all alluded to earlier, it also is about getting more people to adopt it and educate on it. So I think you all brought great points. And one of the things I love about Ingram and their partners, which you all showcased today, is the ability to really just become friends and support one another and be on the same page and appreciate each other's opinions and efforts. So I think it's great, all of the options that were here today.
Yeah, we all work together. We're all very close, but we're also very competitive. And Nicole, I guess Chris wins the bet. So darn it.
I
guess. Nice job, Chris.
So we talked about a lot of things today. You all brought so much detail and information, but if people want to learn more or they have questions, where is the best place to do that?
Yeah, so I would say definitely reach out to your Ingram team, whether it's your sales team or obviously our market development team, Chris as well, right? He is a resource for you guys as our partners to leverage. And then we also have, our Cisco Virtual Learning site that is live and has a ton of content that you can use for your business and to help with your end customer conversations. But again, definitely reach out to your sales team or your market development executive for more information, and they can definitely help get you started.
And then from a Cisco side, I mentioned this earlier, Cisco.com, go into the Cisco Hub site. A lot of information is in there, what we just talked about, especially Lifecycle Advantage. But as Nicole just said, reach out to your Ingram team. They can always get access to me. So we're here to help with any questions that you have.
Well, I thank all three of you today, again, not only for the knowledge you brought, but for the passion and the camaraderie today on this show. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Keri.
Thanks, Keri. This was great.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram TechSoul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, Cisco Edition, taking your business a level up, hosted by Keri Roberts. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production by Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today in your favorite podcast platform.